Well, for the first time, you'll soon be able to get into your electric car and drive all the way from Johannesburg to Cape Town. A new charging station in the tiny Karoo town of Richmond is closing the long-standing gap. It's part of a wider expansion of 33 new top-up sites around the country. Importantly, the stations are able to work with any make or model, and some will be the first ultra-fast chargers in the country, and these promise to enable about 340 kilometers in 30 minutes. The sudden expansion is no coincidence. Over a dozen electric models are due to launch in South Africa this year. Only 0.02% of local vehicle sales last year were electronic models. So let's speak now to author and motoring journalist Alexander Parker. Alexander, thanks so much for joining us. I was going to ask you just how many people have got electric cars in SA, and do we have so few because they're unavailable or because they're just too expensive?
It's a mixture of all of them. Good morning, Annika. It is a price problem. There are probably about 200 or 300 electric cars running around on South Africa's roads right now. But the principal problem in terms of people driving cars is the price, and that is a tax structure problem. These cars tend to be taxed at around about 26% at the border, where a normal internal combustion car is taxed at around about 18%. So there's an extra tax on electric cars for some historical reasons, but the government is looking at that. I believe that this could change this year, which would help bring the price of new electric cars down a little bit.
I mean, Alexander, that seems absurd considering that electric is a cleaner option. Why on earth would there be more tax?
I think, cynically speaking, I think it's really just to protect the fuel levy. So every time you fill up your car with petrol or diesel, almost half of that is gone to taxes and levies, and that's a major source of income for the government. And I think that's the principal problem. So it leaves a hole in the fiscus at a time where the country perhaps feels it can't afford it. So it does present that problem.
What entity then is behind the installation of these electric fueling stations?
So these new ones have come from Audi, South Africa. They've got a fleet of new cars coming this year. I've driven most of them already. They're lovely. The great thing about these things is putting these very fast charging stations in remote locations means that you are able to contemplate long trips across South Africa in your electric car. It would mean that you could leave in the morning with a full battery, stop for a reasonably long lunch, and then do another 500 Ks. You could do 1,000 Ks in a day with one stop. And that, I think, starts to become something that is genuinely accessible and useful for South Africans interested in their long summer holiday.
How far behind are we in South Africa with regards to the ownership of electric cars?
We're pretty far behind. In some of the major markets, they are, in December in the UK, for example, 1 in 4 new cars sold was a full electric car. And so the growth in developed markets of the EV sales is absolutely phenomenal. They're going to sell more than 10 million EVs around the world this year alone. It's really coming, this technology, which is why I think we're seeing some of the luxury brands in South Africa really get involved and try and develop the charging infrastructure just to help people feel comfortable in switching to the technology. I do think it's worth pointing out that public charging infrastructure isn't really the key problem with owning a car, an electric car. For every single public charging station that is installed, at least 4 or 5 are going into people's private homes. And that's where most of the charging actually happens. So it's really an exercise in giving comfort to people who are worried about their occasional long drive.
Is there an element amongst people with disposable income of cachet in owning, or prestige in owning, an electric car in South Africa? I know there is, certainly amongst woke, if you like, or environmentally conscious Hollywood types. How does that filter down here?
I'm not sure it's quite the same thing here, but once you drive an electric car, you realize that the future has arrived. There are astonishing things to drive. They're quiet and they're extremely quick. You don't have inconvenient things like gearboxes and clutches and stuff that can go wrong. They're very simple machines, actually. And the thing about electric mobility is actually it's just really nice. And once you've driven one, it's hard to go back, I think.
Thank you so much. That was journalist and author Alexander Parker. We were talking the other day that we really would like an electric car.